Hello everyone, Veronica here, and today I'm going to show you how to blur a background in Photoshop. We're going to be using the lens blur filter to create a shallow depth of field to make your subject stand out from the background. On the left, we have our original image as shot, and on the right, I've applied the lens blur filter in Photoshop so that the background is less distracting and it brings our subject to the forefront. So if you have objects that are too distracting in your background, or you'd simply like to see less of them, or you just want to highlight the subject, I'm going to show you how to apply a lens blur filter, blur your backgrounds in Photoshop. It's really pretty simple, so let's get started. To begin, we will click on this little button here in our history panel to create a new document from our original, and then we'll close our original document. Okay, and with that done, we are going to double click here on this little lock in our layer panel to make a background from this image. Now, this image happens to have a lot of distraction in the forefront, so I'm actually going to just remove that really quickly using the patch tool. And to do that, all I would do is just select some of this area here that I don't like and replace it with an area that I like. And that's going to be this here. And you can see it blended that in. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. And finally, right here, I'm going to come over here and just grab a piece of this. I should have made it a little bit smaller, but that's okay. Okay, now this is just a really quick edit, but it does the job and it looks pretty decent. And next, what we're going to do is create a selection, and we'll do that by using our quick selection tool. And we're going to come in on our image and just select right around the object that we wish to highlight. So as we're selecting, you may go out of bounds a little bit, and if you do, you'll just use Alt or Command on a Mac and just you deselect the areas that you don't wish, and then go back in. And I'm just going to do this really quickly. It doesn't actually take much time. So we just select our object, and then you would just use your Command or Alt key as you want to deselect. Okay, and now we have pretty much all of it selected. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see what we have here. And you want to look at your objects. Now, what we can do is on our keyboard, hit the Q, and that will allow us to enter quick mask mode. And in quick mask mode, I'm going to be using a small brush. And then for the areas that we want to keep, we will use white, and for the areas we want to delete, we will paint over with black. So you can see here, I'm just using a small brush, and I'm going to very carefully paint out little areas. And you want to do this as neatly as you possibly can, but I am going to be just doing it rather quickly for the sake of this tutorial. And if you use your X key on the keyboard, it'll quickly switch you from white to black. Now you could also use your selection tool, your marquee selection tool, which is what I would typically use to select out an area like this, but I'm already using the brush, so I'm just going to go with it. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And now we hit Q on the keyboard again, and now you can see our selection. So what we'll do is we'll go up here, hit a selection tool, we'll go to Refine Edge, and I'm going to set my feather at about 3. That's 2.9, but 3 is good. And we can smooth it out a little bit, which will cut into the image if you like. And we're going to say OK to that. Now I'll zoom out. And next we're going to create a duplicate layer. And on that layer we're going to create a mask. And then we will Control I or Command I. And next we're going to Control click right on this mask layer. And go over here and grab our gradient tool, and you want to make sure that you have the default black and white. And from there on this mask, make sure you have the mask selected. We're going to draw a gradient, and you'll want to draw your gradient from the bottom to the top like so. And if you'll look here at your mask, you can see what it's doing. And when it looks like it's about right, I would say, I'm going to turn this off so you can see it. So you can see where the horizon line is now. You see my images selected out, and then here is where the gradient starts to take effect. So the bottom of the horizon line is completely faded out, and then it begins to gradually fade in as you move up a little bit. And that looks perfect to me. So you would draw this line up as high as it needs to go in order to keep as much of the forefront as you want. Okay, and with that done, we are going to now click on our image, and we'll go to Filter, Blur, and here is where we're going to go to Lens Blur. And then you can see how that looks. Now, what I have here is I've selected Octagon. I usually use Octagon because to me it seems like it gives the best blur, Octagon 8. If you choose these different ones, you can see how it takes a different effect as you're blurring. But just choose the one that works best for you. And like I said, for me, I choose Octagon 8. And you can set the radius to blur as much or as little as you want. And that looks pretty good, actually. It makes her stand out a lot. However, it looks a little bit fake. So I bring mine down just a little bit. And I'm happy with that, so I'll say OK. And then we'll deselect and zoom in. And that is actually a pretty good blend. And sometimes if my edges were a little bit too harsh, what I'll do is click on the mask, and then I'll go to Filter, Blur, and then this time I'll go into Gaussian blur, and I'll just blur the mask out a little bit, and that eliminates any harsh edges. And because we're working on a mask, you can always fix anything that needed to be fixed. So I'll click on my mask again, and I'm going to grab a paintbrush, and it's going to have a nice soft edge. We'll go about here with my white selected. I'm going to go in here and just paint around this edge here so that I don't have that stark edge around her t-shirt. And you can see I just switched from black to white as I'm painting. Okay, now wait a minute, one little section here. Okay, and she looks pretty good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create another layer. And if I turn that on and off, you can see the effect that we've created. So now what we're going to do is create another layer. And to do that, I'm going to go to Select All, Edit, Copy Merged, and then Control V to paste. So basically what I've done is just created a new layer of my edited image and then pasted it on top. And next, to bring even more emphasis to our subject, we'll go to Filter, Render, Lighting Effects. And here we're just going to add a little bit of light to our subject. And what I've done is I've gone here and I've made sure this is set to point. And then I have my intensity set at 23, but you can play with this slider to get the effect that you desire. And you can change the exposure. And when you're happy with your results, you just hit enter on the keyboard. And there you have it. Once you're done, you can merge all your layers and add a bit of sharpness. And now you can see that our subject stands out beautifully from the background. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'm Veronica Spriggs, and I'll see you again for the next one.